Jesus didn't have many friends in the south. Of course, they knew he had grown up in the north, and they all knew that no prophet was coming out of the north. They all knew that the one was going to come out of a little town called Bethlehem in the south. So even though they had heard these stories about his miracles up in the north, they didn't put a lot of stock in them. He couldn't be the one. He was from the north. He did have 3 friends in the south, though. It was a family, a close-knit family. A brother named Lazarus, his sister named Martha, and their sister named Mary. The 3 of them lived in a little town called Bethany, just a couple of miles outside of Jerusalem. Now, Jesus had had a run-in with the authorities in Jerusalem. They had actually tried to stone him to death. So he had fled across the river into the area where he had first been baptized, and he was kind of keeping a low profile, letting things calm down, when he got word from the south that Lazarus was ill. More than ill, he was deathly ill. Jesus said to his disciples, "Don't worry, fellas. This illness will not be won by death. In fact, this illness will be to show the glory of God." And then he waited for 2 days. So his friend is dying, and Jesus waits for 2 days. Then he says to his disciples, "Okay, it's time to go back to Judea, back to where they are in Bethany." His disciples said, "You know, maybe that's not a good idea. Do you remember how it ended in Judea? The stones, the trying to kill you. Maybe we shouldn't go back there." Jesus, in his enigmatic way of replying to things, said, "So you're worried about going back. Every day has 12 hours of daylight. As long as you walk in the daylight, you won't stumble. It's only when you walk at night that you stumble. And besides, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, and I must go wake him up." The disciples said, "Well, if he's fallen asleep, this is a good sign. We know that when someone is sick and finally they're able to rest, that's a sign that recovery is just around the corner." Jesus said, "No, you don't get it, do you? He hasn't fallen asleep. He's dead. And for your sakes, I'm glad that I wasn't there so that you can believe." One of the disciples, the one named Thomas, said, "Oh, great. Okay, we'll go with him. We're all going to die." They left where they were, crossed the Jordan River, up the road toward Jerusalem, get to the outskirts of the village of Bethany. They stop. Word went on ahead. The teacher is near. Martha runs out of the house. She gets to where Jesus is, and she said, "Master, had you been here, my brother would not have died." Jesus said, "Martha, your brother will rise again." And she said, "Well, I know he'll rise again, sure. In the last day, you know, in the resurrection at the last day, yeah, but small consolation for us now in our grief and in your absence." Jesus said, "Ego, Eimi, the resurrection. Ego, Eimi, the life." She knew what those words meant. He said, "Martha, if someone believes in me, even if they die, they will live. And if someone lives and believes in me, they will never die. Do you believe this, Martha?" "Yes," she said, "I do believe. I believe you are the Son of God. I believe you are the one we were always waiting for." She went back to the house, told Mary, Mary, the master is here. He wants to see you. Mary jumps up, leaves the house in a hurry. Now all the Jewish mourners are there. They see Mary get up. They see her leave. They assume she's going to the tomb to mourn her brother's passing. So they follow her. But Jesus is not at the tomb. He's just there where Martha had met him before he came into the village of Bethany. Mary gets out there. She drops in the ground, a puddle of despair in front of Jesus. She's crying. All the mourners join her in her lament. She says exactly the same thing that her sister had said to Jesus, accusing him, Master, had you been here, my brother would not have died. Jesus said, where have you laid him? They showed him the spot. Mary's weeping, the people are weeping. Jesus wept. Tears rolled out of his eyes, down his cheeks. It wasn't just a lonely tear. I mean, he wept, racked by grief. Isn't it funny how two people can see the exact same happening and respond in very different ways? Some people saw Jesus crying and said, look how much he loved him. Other people saw Jesus crying and said, you would think the guy who had opened the eyes of a blind man could have stopped him from dying. Jesus said, take away the stone. Martha said, wait. Now let's think about this. He's been dead 4 days, and in this he would stink by this point. Jesus said, Martha, didn't I tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? Then he looked up to the sky. He said, Father, thank you for hearing me. I know that you always hear me, and the only reason I'm saying this out loud is so that the people around me can know that it's you. And now here they are. These are the religious leaders. Jesus is there. There's a man who's been dead for 4 days. They know this man. He is an important, wealthy man. They've accompanied him in his sickness and in his dying and in his entombment. Jesus said to the mouth of the tomb, Lazarus, come on out of there. He didn't. Did he just say what I thought he said? And then there's a little puff of dust from inside that cave. And all thoughts screech to a halt as their minds try to comprehend the incomprehensible. And then perhaps there's a glimpse of cloth from inside the dead man's cave. And then somehow, hands bound, feet bound, face bound, he lurches out of the cave, the man they had buried 4 days ago. Complete silence, rubbing of eyes, exchanged amazed glances. You might want to untie him, Jesus said. Perhaps the same guys who had rolled away the stone jumped to untie the hands and feet and the head cloth of Lazarus. But you know how I said two different people can see the same thing and come to different conclusions? Isn't that strange? So some people saw Lazarus resuscitated, this corpse brought back to life. And they believed in Jesus that he was indeed the one who was to come and bring them hope. Yet at the same time, others saw the exact same miracle and came to crazily different conclusions. They ran into Jerusalem. They told the authorities, "You'll never guess what Jesus did in Bethany today." They called together the leadership council of the Jewish people. They gathered together. They said, "This will never do. If we let this continue, the whole world's going after this guy. The whole world's believing in him. If we let this continue, the Romans are going to come. They're going to clamp down, mind my words, and that will be the end of our religion. That will be the end of our place, and that will be the end of us." Caiaphas, who that year was the high priest, said, "You stupid, stupid people. You know nothing at all. Don't you know that it's better for this one man to die rather than for all of us to die?" By saying this, Caiaphas inadvertently prophesied that Jesus would die for their whole nation, and not only for them, but he would die instead of all of the scattered children of God so that they could be made one. From that time on, they looked for a way to kill Jesus. And that's one small part of God's big story.